The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Wednesdays here at Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Elijah Herbel, joined once again here in studio by Will Wilson, filling in for Schmitty this week as Schmitty has the week off. He is doing some golf, and you can check out his Twitter at Schmidt_radio for some golfing pictures as he's out in the western side of the state, doing that despite the walking boot that he currently finds himself in. So we hope Schmitty's enjoying his time away. We do have Will Wilson sitting in with us all week long as we're looking forward to 3 more shows with Will, correct?
Yeah, yes. You're right. I love how you had to confirm that. Like, you're scared I'm going to bounce out of here at some point.
No, my mind has been spinning this week with all of Schmitty's responsibilities as one busy dude.
Yes.
One busy dude, and it's only going to get busier here as fall camp gets going. Obviously, Big Ten Media Days. Schmitty's going to be off in Indy for Big Ten Media Days. Those are some long days. Then fall camp, the season gets going. So a busy time of year coming up for Schmitty. And myself as well, but we'll say mostly Schmitty. He's the one who really does the hard work around here. So a much-needed week off for Schmitty despite the injury that he sustained. We're happy to have Will in here. Will, how are we doing today?
Good, really good. Yeah, not too much today. Hot out there. It's getting hot, but it's cold in here. That's why I have a sweatshirt on. So, yeah, pretty good day. What about you?
Well, you and I just got done watching the second Euros semifinal. We're not going to spend too much time on this because I know our listeners really don't care. Exhilarating game between the Netherlands and the UK, I guess, England. So that was a really fun game. England wins it at the death, and it's going to be Spain versus England in the Euros final. If you care. If you don't, we'll move on. I just thought it was a really fun game. Plenty to get into today, and we'll also get to the Hail Varsity Radio starting 5 here in just a moment. We'll have Mike Babcock with us here in about 15 minutes. Mike's already standing by in the green room ready to go. Seeing what type of conversation we have here to start the show. Hopefully it's good. I don't really know yet. We'll see where it goes. We'll also have Evan Bland joining us to kick off hour 2. Evan from the Omaha World-Herald will get a little bit into Husker Baseball as they've announced the tournament that they're going to be in to kick off the season down in Frisco, Texas. We'll get his thoughts on that, as well as the news of the week, obviously, with Evan Cooper, John Butler, and the defensive back room. So we'll get into that here in about an hour with Evan Bland. And then near the end of the show, we'll have Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, with us yet again. A Jock Doc Wednesday. Today's topic, Kawhi Leonard. As Kawhi Leonard pulled out of the U.S. men's national team for the Olympics. He's not going to be playing, replaced by Derek White, I believe. So we'll talk about some of the chronic knee issues that Kawhi's been facing and if that puts a bit of a stopwatch or a clock on the end of his career. He's played a lot of years in the NBA, been hampered by injury over the past couple. We'll see what Dr. Brandon thinks of that, and maybe also get a thought on Schmitty's ankle injury.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
If you got the doctor in the show, you might as well get a thought.
Yeah,
I don't want to invade Schmitty's privacy too much, but that could be a fun topic of conversation to have.
Schmitty may thank us.
Maybe.
You know?
I mean, he's got doctors as well that are treating him, but I think my opinion might mean more once I talk to Dr. Brandon Seifert.
Okay.
One of the best in the business, Dr. Brandon Seifert.
Oh, I thought you were talking about you.
Well, I'm saying once I talk to Dr. Brandon, I'll be pretty much an expert because that's how Dr. Brandon makes you feel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he is really good at what he does. So excited to have Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Plenty coming up today. As a little later in the show, we'll talk Mike Gundy. We'll also talk Coach Donovan Raiola as he was on the network last night, gave some thoughts on the offensive line, what's coming up for the remainder of the summer before we get to fall camp. But where we lead this off, Will, is with the Hail Varsity Radio starting 5. I almost forgot about that. I didn't. So let's get right into it. Justin first in today. Justin getting in a hair before 3:30. We also have Scott in. Scott says he's golfing at Myrtle Beach without a boot today because he's smart enough to put his foot in the cart when passing an immovable object.
Ooh, yikes.
That's
nice shot.
Broderick's in third. Jeff from the Boulder Peace Treaty in fourth. And we have Crazy Spider Adventures rounding out the starting 5. Coming off the bench, first off the bench is the other Dave, along with crew. We got Jimmy, Andrew as well, Brennan, and Sal. That makes 10, I believe, if I know how to count, which some people say I can't, but I try my best. Michael, Patrick, Eric, Also in, we all have 3-putt, as 3-putt informed us that England was through to the Euro finals. That's going to be a great match. I'm really looking forward to that one. For Elijah the Soccer Nerd. Thank you, 3-putt, for that. Crew also is saying something about my soccer takes. I have to scroll up. I don't know. But there's your Hail Varsity Radio starting 5 for the day. Again, if you want to get into the Hail Varsity Radio starting 5, you can find that on YouTube. The Hail Varsity YouTube channel is where you go. Just search up Hail Varsity right at 4:06. We go live every single day. The stream is posted a little bit before that, so if you want to get into the starting 5, you got to be in before the show starts. Sometime between 3 and 3:30 most days, that stream will be up. I like to change it up for you folks there at home, get some different names in there every single day. If it was just people setting an alarm, wouldn't be the same, you know? So I have to change it up and keep the people on their toes so we get a different starting 5 every single day. It's a little fun game we play. Appreciate having the stream listeners in on a Wednesday for us. But where we lead this off, Will, and I'll just leave this very open-ended, would you pay for the right to go see a Husker fall camp practice?
Yeah, I would. I know they've done that in the past. Didn't they do that a few years ago? Yeah, didn't they do that with the rule already? Maybe, I don't know.
They've done it for the student section. They've done the student section bash, if you will, where all the students get in for free.
Okay, yeah.
And you get to go enjoy the practice that way. I don't think you've had it open to the public in this way where if you pay money.
I thought they did it once. I don't know if they charged anything, but I would do it, definitely. Under the lights, be kind of a cool thing.
Well, so it's announced today that through 1890 Nebraska, formerly the 1890 Initiative, there are going to be tickets available for a practice. It's going to be one of the first practices of fall camp. August 3rd is the date. Tickets go on sale tomorrow. $25 general admission. You can pay for the right to go in and see a Husker practice. Personally, I'm sure there are people out there who would be quite interested in this, and more power to them. I'm not trying to take away from this event by any means, but to me, it's a practice. Whenever you go watch the spring game, it's a glorified practice as well. This isn't going to be a glorified practice. Maybe it will be a little bit because you get the fans in there. I don't know. I'm not sure how much you'll be able to glean from a practice, especially one of the first practices of fall camp. But that's what you're going there for. If you're trying to get information, which me working this job, I'm always trying to get information. I'm not sure how much information you'll be able to get from that practice. I think it would be cool to get a peek behind the scenes and be able to see how a mat rule practice is led, to get to see how all these coaches on the field are working. But in terms of getting an idea of what type of team you're going to have this year, I've gone out and watched Denver Broncos training camp practices. I've had years where I've gone, and I think I've been 3 or 4 different times now. I'm like, man, this team's going to be great this year, and they're terrible. You never get a sense of it whenever you're playing yourself. And I mean, that's just a case of fall camp in general. Mm-hmm. Any team in America, you don't know how good you're going to be until the team on the other side of the ball is wearing a different color than you. That's whenever you start knowing how good you actually are. And especially once you start getting teams that are expected to be contenders throughout a season. Usually that's in the Big Ten slate. Once you get there, maybe you get that one non-conference game. But if you're going in order to get a sense of how is this team going to be this year, one of the first practices of fall camp is probably not a time whenever you're going to be able to do that.
You're right. But if I could twist this,
sure.
Of course, this is all supporting NIL.
Oh, yeah.
All the ticket sales, all of that money is going straight to, funding the athletes. So you're telling me you don't want to help fund the athletes' pockets? Shame on you. Shame on you.
You did twist that against me bad, didn't you?
But do you know what day this is on?
It's going to be August 3rd.
Do you know what day of the week that is? Because if this is like a Friday or a Saturday, that could kind of be a fun night, head out to the bars, have a few, go to practice.
It is a Saturday night.
Okay, yeah, so you can kind of treat it like a game day in a way. I think that'd be kind of fun. But, NIL is a reason to go. And also, just to see Raiola. I mean, that enough, I think, is going to attract a lot of people just to see how this young kid looks.
So we're getting sorry, I'll get to that in just a second. I was getting distracted by the comments in the stream. But yeah, it's an opportunity, and you're right. The NIL, if this is how you want to support athletes through NIL to go check out a practice and give yourself something to do on a Saturday night, I guess I can see that. I'm just coming at it maybe from too much of a journalist perspective of like, man, I want to know more about this team. And I don't think you're going to get a sense of that because, you've seen a lot at the spring game. What you saw in the spring game is probably pretty similar to what you see here, maybe even a little more dialed back as you try to lock back in and make sure everyone's on the same page, get some of these newcomers involved. I'm not sure how much of a sense of how good this team is going to be shown on that Saturday night, but I think it is still a cool opportunity, and I think we'll probably even get this expanded as years go on, you get more and more chances to see scrimmages. Obviously, there's an importance to having some of what you do during fall camp be a little bit secret. But at the end of the day, whenever you open the season with UTEP, like, it's all going to be on national television anyway.
Yeah, right.
But what you do and how good you are is going to be broadcast to the world. Like, you have maybe 1 to 2 weeks of the season where what you're doing and some of your schemes are going to be hidden. I understand the value as well if you're making coaching changes or big schematic changes offensively or defensively. I understand the value of some secrecy. But really, when you're in year 2 of a rebuild, schematically there's not going to be much different. You've already shown some things in the spring game, albeit a dialed-back version of it. I'm not sure how much we're going to get the surprise element this season. So I understand why they're doing it. I think it's great for NIL. I wonder how many people are going to end up showing up. $25 is the price point for a general admission ticket. I believe doors open at 6:30 and you get to go at 7.
It's a good idea. And I could see them doing this more. If it's going to help fund NIL, which obviously that's the main goal of 1890, it's a great idea. Great idea.
We get a comment in here from Tuck that I'd be curious to see. He says he's the fire chief in... I'm going to screw up the pronunciation, so I'm not going to say a town in Nebraska. And he says, check out what happened on Facebook. Venango?
Yeah, I've never heard of that town.
Sorry, Tuck. I do apologize for not knowing where that even is. But he says the water tower is on fire in town.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
How does the water tower
catch on fire?
Interesting.
You'd think it would be kind of naturally defended against that, considering it's water.
Yeah, and also, how do you set that on? If, say, somebody set it on fire, how would you...
Unfortunately, it was empty. The water tower was empty.
Ah, that makes more sense. Okay. Thank you for your service, Tuck.
It says crushed it on pronunciation. Venango.
Oh, very
Venango,
good.
Nebraska. That's pretty cool. Anyway, the real topic of conversation I want to have here, though, we spent the 5 seconds on the practice. That was the news dump today from 1890 Nebraska. So that's going to be an opportunity for you, the fan, coming up a little bit later this fall. But College Football 25, the new video game coming out next week, released their top 100 players that are going to be in the game this year. There were some surprises, such as the number 1 overall quarterback being Shedeur Sanders. Okay. That's all I'll say about that one. Okay.
I don't think that might not be as crazy as we think, but I'm not going to agree with it.
I mean, he did have a 25-plus touchdowns to, 5 interceptions last year. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Behind that offensive line, sure. I think Shedeur Sanders is a top-level quarterback, the number 1 quarterback in the country. I don't know about that. There's some good quarterbacks out there. Jalen Milroe comes to mind. Quinn Ewers comes to mind. Like, there's guys around that I think are damn good quarterbacks, and I'm not sure how I feel about Shedeur being number 1. But I digress. The more important thing for Nebraska is that there was not a single Husker included. Does that really matter in a football season if you're in the top 100 players of College Football 25? No, absolutely not. It's a video game. It doesn't really matter all that much. But it brings up an interesting question to me is how many players and which guys does Nebraska need to have in this upcoming season be playing at the level of top 100? I'm getting my stuff all screwed up here. Top 100 for Nebraska to have a successful season. Which guys come to mind as being guys that really need to stand out and be difference makers on the offense or on the defense for Nebraska to have a successful season, which I'm defining like 7-5 is progress. I would call 8-4 successful.
I would say, some names that come to mind, a couple guys on the D-line, the Polar Bear, obviously, Ty Robinson.
Two guys that I'm a little bit surprised weren't included in the first place, but I get it. Nebraska has not been a nationally relevant team for a couple years ago, or for a couple years now, and I understand why you don't put guys from non-nationally relevant teams unless you're a real skill position, sexy position. I understand not putting them in the top 100.
Yeah, like you said, it's a video game. I'm not going to get mad over it. But those two guys on the D-line, I'd say anybody on the O-line. I'm kind of giving general answers here. Really any of the two running backs, Gabe Irvin or I can't remember Oregon running back's name. Thank you. Yes, I would say.
You throw Ramir Johnson in there too.
Yeah, definitely. Any one of those guys. Those are kind of my answers.
How about one here that I think. And as a freshman quarterback, I'm not going to put Dylan Raiola saying, for Nebraska to have a successful season, he needs to be a top 100 player in America. I'm not going to say that because as a freshman, you need to be able to develop. But how about one of his pass catchers? Just one of them.
Yeah, definitely.
I know Jalen Lloyd flashed last year with his ability to take the top off of defense. Could that be a guy that in year 2, with some more strides, can become a top 100 type player in America with his big playability? I look at Naor, and I know Naor had injury issues, and that's why he never quite succeeded at Texas, but he still had a lot of positive reports from his time at Texas. He comes in here as being a guy that can both use his speed and his athleticism as an advantage, as well as a big catch radius and that kind of sure-handed nature of a guy. Is that a guy that if he's a top 100 player could really allow Dylan Raiola to flourish in a freshman season? Could put Banks in there as well. Jamal Banks is a guy that, with his sure-handedness, possession-type receiver, could he be a guy that is just such a nightmare for defenses that he can end up being a top 100 player, allowing Dylan Raiola to be successful? I think you laid out the defensive line with Nash and Tyre are kind of obvious answers as being the highest potential for being top 100 players. But in terms of Nebraska's ability to take that next step, I look at the pass catchers and the guys that are going to take Dylan Raiola from a good talent into a good quarterback and make it easier for a freshman quarterback to succeed as being the guys that could take Nebraska, should they have one of those seasons that is getting them nationally praised, these pass catchers, top 100 caliber type players. If that's the guy, or if one of those guys can stand out, can they turn Dylan Raiola into a guy who has an above average freshman quarterback season?
Although that's an interesting conversation for maybe another show. In order for Nebraska to somehow make the playoff, does Raiola need to be a top 5 quarterback in the country? That's interesting because every quarterback for a team that's made it, you could argue, has been one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. That's interesting.
You'd have some debate last year with J.J. McCarthy, I think.
Well,
he won the national championship. Was he a top 5 quarterback? According to the NFL, maybe. Did he have the stats to back it up? No, he handed the ball off half the time. More than half the time.
Interesting.
We'll continue on this conversation. Mike Babcock joins us, Husker historian, Hail Varsity. Also check out his newsletter. He'll be with us after the break here on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Wednesday here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Elijah Herbel, Will Wilson taking you through the show today. Joined here shortly by Mike Babcock, Husker historian. Get his newsletter with Hurrdat Sports bi-weekly into your inbox as well. We'll check in with Mike here in just a second. He's on this stream, but first I'm getting the picture uploaded. I've got the picture sent to me thanks to our friend Eric in the stream of the Venango water tower. It's slowly uploading. We'll see what kind of Wi-Fi this radio station has. Here it is. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. So Tux had himself a busy day, I guess. So if you're missing this, listening on the radio, no idea what we're talking about, you can check it out, the Hail Varsity YouTube page. I'll send you the plug to get over to the Hail Varsity YouTube page one more time, where we stream live every single day. But welcome Mike Babcock to the show. Mike, it's good to see you on a Wednesday. I think we do the fit check with you every single Wednesday now. I'm seeing that hat. Is that a state capitol on the hat?
It's from a high school all-star game. I was the official scorer for the game not too long ago, the Fagler of Brohlhorst all-star game.
You're the second person I've seen wearing that hat today, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Our friend Ryan Swanigan, you hear him on Salt Dogs broadcast here locally on KFOR, also works over at 1011. He was wearing that hat also, I saw. So I think
that was a big deal. They had red ones and blue ones, I think.
He was wearing a red one. That's why I was like, huh.
There you go.
Well, there's the Mike Babcock fit check for you. Grateful Dead shirt on today?
Yeah, it's pretty mundane. It's just says established 1965. As I said, pretty mundane.
Well, it's one of my favorite segments of the week where we see what Mike is wearing. But Mike, as we turn to business here and talk some Husker football, we'll get to Evan Cooper, John Butler here in just a second. Butler still not officially announced as the Nebraska defensive backs coach, but by all accounts is already in Lincoln, kind of has boots on the ground and doing some work. I want to get your thoughts here on this open practice. Will thought maybe this has been done before. As you dive into your own Husker memory, do you ever remember a fall camp practice being open to the public, whether it was to buy tickets or not?
I seem to have a sense that a practice might have been open to the public. I don't ever recall a preseason practice being open for a charge for fans to get into. That, to me, I don't know. I'm an old guy. Charging fans to get in to watch a practice at $25 a shot, and that seems a little bit extreme to me. And worrying about whether Nebraska has somebody in the top 100 in a video game, also is concerning to me. But, from that standpoint, I guess it probably makes a difference in recruiting. Don't you suppose? I mean, it probably spreads the word for the student athletes or the players that are included in those 100. But beyond that, I don't really, to my way of thinking, that's probably not a big way to evaluate either. But in both cases, that's the nature of things, I guess, in this day and age. When you're talking about NIL, you got to figure out a way to generate some revenue to fund that. And I guess this is one of the ways that they've come up with to do it.
Well, Mike, you talked about the top 100. Let's go there really fast, because I tried to twist it a little bit. I tried to bring it open to the people who maybe aren't video game people, and saying that, being included in the top 100 means you are probably a pretty dang good football player, and you're doing enough that you're getting some attention nationally for people to say, this guy's one of the top 100 players in America. And I think there are guys on this team that if they have that kind of season could mean really, really good things for Nebraska. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that. I think that's to have that kind of exposure to be someone that gets picked into that group of 100 is important, but it goes beyond statistics, I think. I mean, Shedeur Sanders is the number one quarterback. Well, what does that have to do with his dad and all of the attention that's been drawn to Colorado, to a Colorado team that didn't have a winning record last year, and had, Dion has done things totally different way than anybody that I know of as a head coach, and so that kind of publicity carries over, and certainly gets Shedeur in the conversation there, I think, beyond his statistics, which were good, but it's just the nature of the way things are. There was all this hype and excitement about when is it going to be released and when are we going to find out this kind of stuff. It's off-season attention, but we'll find out what happens once we kick off and we actually play games. That's the important thing, not a video game from my standpoint.
Mike, I want to go back to what you were talking about with the practice, charging $25 a seat. If it was free, the team could do whatever they want because it's free. But I like what you said, if you're paying $25, they should make a while. You know what I mean? Like, make it something that can be fun to watch, maybe do something a little different. Do you agree that it's important that if they're going to be charging people to make this kind of a show?
I would think so, that it would be important that you do that in some way, shape, or form. But again, the bottom line is they're generating revenue for NIL, and that's pretty upfront. People know that's what it is, and so you go into it perfectly aware of why it's being done, and to create entertainment for you as a fan is not necessarily why it's being done. It's being done to generate revenue. So, I don't know about that. And I don't know how it would be handled, how it'll be handled. I mean, it'll be interesting to see from that standpoint. And is the media allowed in there without buying a ticket, or what, how is that to be covered as well? Because that's a consideration. But, you're obviously not going to show anything that a scout from an opponent would be concerned with. It's going to be pretty upfront, pretty mundane from that standpoint.
Well, do you think
for fans, it's exciting, I guess. Hey, I get to see it practice. It cost me $25, so what?
Do you think the University of Michigan would have a staffer buy a $25 ticket just to go sit and watch?
Yeah, probably so. Let's see what's going on there. They're going to sell at least 12 tickets. Whoever's on the schedule is probably buying a ticket to come and see this practice, because you never know, you might see something. So let's make sure that we're there.
I think it would be funny if they had this event and it's just 2 hours of them practicing only special teams, just punts and kicks and kickoffs, kick returns.
Well, you still, if you're a scout, you still got to know how that works.
That's true. That is true. It's Mike Babcock with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking some Husker football. A quick note here, Greg Berhalter fired as the U.S. men's national team coach. Had to sneak that in. It doesn't matter for our show. I'm just quite overjoyed to see that. It's brought my mood up. Don't like seeing people get fired, but that dude didn't need to have a job 2 years ago. I digress. We move back to Husker football, though, when we talk the news of the week. Mike, Evan Cooper resigning as Husker defensive backs coach on Friday. Nebraska moving quickly. It's expected John Butler is going to be officially announced at some point here soon as Nebraska's new defensive backs coach. And I'll get your thoughts on the situation as a whole, both timing point of view with how this went down, Nebraska moving quickly to get Butler, and what you think some of Butler's challenges are going to be once he's officially announced and is working as Nebraska's defensive backs coach.
Well, first of all, I'm not familiar with the reasons behind Cooper's decision to step aside. I don't know that part of it, so it's hard to evaluate from that standpoint. But the timing of it for the staff and for Butler coming in, and I checked the Huskers.com before we started today. He's still not listed on the roster, but we should probably go that pretty soon. Obviously it's a challenge because you didn't work with players in the spring. It would have been that would have been the way to make the transition into the staff is to be here for spring ball. But he has connection with Coach Rule. They've got that communication already established. So I think that's a positive. He's got that NFL experience. That's probably a positive as well. And, you just come in and get the job done the best way you can. You have to familiarize yourself with the players and make connection with them. That's pretty important. And, you can get that done in fall camp, but I think that's a priority, the way things have been approached with this staff in general. I think that's one of the things that he has to look at.
In your mind, is the defensive backs room the biggest question on the team headed into 2024?
Well, certainly because of a new coach, that changes the dynamic, I think. And so, I would say that that's probably the case, is that you have the other position groups have coaches that they've been with, at least through spring practice. And so, that's where I would turn my attention. Certainly, although I think there's talent back there. So you have that to start with.
It's Mike Babcock with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking some Husker football thoughts. And Mike, before we get out of here, we're going to get to this next segment. Any reaction to Mike Gundy, his appearance at Big 12 Media Days yesterday, talking a little bit about his star running back, saying, well, I've done that 1,000 times. And he's clarified, saying it wasn't necessarily about drunk driving. It was about just making a mistake. But any reaction to what Mike Gundy had to say?
Again, in this day and age, these kind of things, nothing surprises me. It's and I say that in the context of I watched England and the Netherlands today too, and I'll watch Colombia and Uruguay tonight.
Nice.
So there you are. That's where I'm coming from. Probably undercuts what I have had to say, right?
So Mike Babcock with us here. Mike, let us know before you get out what's coming up from you. Your bi-weekly newsletter, you send it out to the email mikeb@hurrdatsports.com is where you can get it. What's coming up from you over the next couple of weeks?
I think the latest one was Joe Gans. His performance when he got the opportunity to come off the bench. Joe Gans is one of the guys that I've really respected what he did, because he stuck around and finally got an opportunity. And when he got the opportunity, he really produced.
So Mike Babcock with us here. Check out his newsletter and check out his work as well. Follow him on Twitter @MDBabs. Mike, appreciate you checking in with us for a few minutes today. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we'll chat next week.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There he is, Mike Babcock with us here on Hail Varsity. I laid it out. We're going to get into Mike Gundy, his sound bites from Big 12 Media Days. They're taking the college football world by storm today. Did he have intent behind it? We'll discuss that after the break here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Continuing through a Wednesday here, it's Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Logger Elijah Herbel, joined by Will Wilson here for the Wednesday. We're going to be with you all week long, as Schmitty has the week off to be back with us. I think Saturday morning is the time we're shooting for. You can find us both on Twitter at Herbal Essences for me, Elijah Herbel, at Willie on the radio for the man sitting across from me here, Will Wilson. You can also listen to him live every single day, 10 to 11 a.m. Our local listeners here in Lincoln can find that on our home station, 1240 KFOR. If you're elsewhere on any of one of our affiliates here across the state, you can find that streaming live every single day or you can find the morning hookup on YouTube. Again, 10 to 11 a.m. is where you find Will and his co-host, Bill Hooks. We thank Will for being in here on a Wednesday. And as we shift gears here just a little bit, we're going to talk Oklahoma State Big 12 Media Days. It's kind of been a mess to start from. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the social media coverage out of Big 12 Media Days. Have you seen any of this?
I've seen a little bit.
So it started off with they had lockers for every single team with their jersey hung up in it. And above the University of Cincinnati's jersey, they spelled Cincinnati wrong.
Yikes.
So that was not a great way for them to start. They also spelled...
Hold on. Spell Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Did I get it right? I don't think I did.
I don't think there's two N's in there.
Yeah, there is. I got it right.
Oh.
Cincinnati. They spelled it Cincinnati.
I guess I don't know how to spell it either.
That's a win. Elijah Herbel is coming back for that Hail Varsity Radio Spelling Bee crown. Did you listen to that segment whenever Schmitty
I did not.
Cosburn? He got me with some brutal names.
Yeah.
The one I should have gotten right was Giannis Antetokounmpo.
You had to spell that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough.
Wally Zarbiak, I had to spell. Mike Krzyzewski, I had to spell.
That one's hard.
Yeah, they're all hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
doesn't that one start with a V?
Krzyzewski, a K.
Yeah. Oh, a K. See,
yeah.
I'm terrible at this.
Yeah. Moonbot, he knows how to spell Cincinnati. Congrats, Moonbot.
Good job, Moon.
I know it as well. Anyway, they misspelled that. They also had one of those little posts that was on the field that had an arrow to every single city with the distance, and they misspelled Fort Worth.
Oh. How'd they spell that? How can you mess that up?
That was the funny one. Forth.
Fourth.
They spelled it Fort Worth.
Yikes.
Yes, they screwed that one up as well.
What intern got fired for that one? Poor guy.
But it continued. This comes after Oklahoma State running back Ollie Gordon II. He's one of the top 10 players in college football 24 this next season. He was arrested over the weekend, I should say last week, speeding and swerving. He also had some half-full liquor bottles in his car, and he blew a .10 on the DUI test, the blood alcohol content. So he was the focus of Big 12 Media Days. Mike Gundy, head coach, obviously been at Oklahoma State for years, still brought him along and spent some time talking about both Ollie Gordon, if there's going to be any sort of punishment for Gordon, as well as his take on it. We'll start off with, is there going to be any sort of punishment for Gordon? And this is a bit of an interesting answer from Gundy.
We're in a time where you guys are essentially employees. You guys make lots of money to play this game. It's different than it was 5 years ago. And your punishment's going to be facing the facts. That's why we brought him here today. I said, you're not going into hiding. You're going to face the music. You're going to have to stand up and talk to people and answer questions. And hopefully, more than football, you can learn from the situation you've been in. Because if not, then we have a real issue. But he's going to play. And I'm going to do what we think is best for Oklahoma State football. And I think it's best for Ollie to play. If there's any punishment, it's make him carry the ball 50 times in the first game.
Maybe not the best response from Mike Gundy. He went on to say, and I don't think we're going to get this, the first thing I asked him was anybody hurt? Saying aside from football and everything else, that's something that will be a lifelong effect. He got out really lucky here in this case. So no punishment necessarily coming from Gordon besides maybe 50 carries a game. But the quote that's really making waves from Mike Gundy is this.
So I looked it up on my phone. What would be the legal limit? Like in Oklahoma is .08 and Ollie was .1. So I looked it up, and it was based on body weight. Not to get into the legal side of it, but I thought really 2 or 3 beers or 4. I'm not justifying what Ollie did. I'm telling you what decision I made. Well, I thought I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life. and I, it's just fine. So I got lucky. People get lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wished he could have done better. But when I talked to Ollie, I told him, I said, you're lucky you got out light because you make a lot of money to play football.
So that's Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy on the Ollie Gordon situation. The quote in there that everyone's making light of, and if you've missed this, it's the fact that he said, that's 3 to 4 beers. I've probably done that 1,000 times.
Yeah. I don't think that's like the biggest thing, though. I think the thing that everyone's wondering is, how many times have we seen people get a DUI on sports teams and they get suspended?
Yeah.
And he's not being suspended.
Well, for saying that I've probably done that 1,000 times, that's a crazy thing to say, first off.
Yeah.
A crazy thing to say. He clarified and said I wasn't talking about driving under the influence whenever I said I've done that 1,000 times. He's saying doing things that were, by the letter of the law, illegal, but you didn't notice it at the time, or you didn't think twice about it at the time, made a mistake in that way, and not been caught, is what he said he was referring to. I'm not sure about that, but what I do want to ask the question here is Mike Gundy's a guy that's been known to take heat off his players in the past. Everyone remembers that I'm a man, I'm 40.
Yes.
Do you remember what he was even referring to in that speech?
Yeah, kind of. Go ahead. What was it?
That's exactly the point I'm making here.
Wasn't it like a newspaper wrote a piece about one of his players?
Yeah, one of his quarterbacks.
Yeah.
A scathing review of one of his quarterbacks. And he gets up in front of the mic and goes on a tirade. And for the next week, what is everybody talking about? Mike Gundy, not the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's talking about Mike Gundy's tirade. You still see the soundbite out there.
Yeah.
Now, Ollie Gordon gets this DUI. Mike Gundy goes and says some questionable things at Big 12 Media Days. What's everyone talking about?
Mike Gundy.
Everyone's talking about Mike Gundy.
Yes.
Do we think this could be a little bit tactical from Mike Gundy? Mike Gundy's been around the block.
Yeah.
He's been around college football a long time. I think, in my opinion, a guy that has a job for that long probably knows what he's doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they love him in Stillwater.
They do.
They love him, and he only cares what people in Stillwater think. He doesn't care what you and I or anybody else in the country is saying about this situation. As long as people in Stillwater are okay with it, he's fine. You know what I mean?
And that's what I'm saying. I think he knows he can get in front of the mic and say some crazy things, and he's still going to have job security in Stillwater. And at the end of the day, what did yesterday do? His time at the stand and his time in front of reporters took a whole lot of pressure off his running back.
It did.
Now it's everyone saying, man, why aren't you suspending him? Man, he's going to be playing. Man, why are you saying he tried to clarify, but it sounded in the quote like he was saying, yeah, I've gotten behind the wheel after 3 to 4 beers 1,000 times in my life. Never gotten caught.
Now they did, I believe they sent the running back 2 media days. So
They did.
He's going to get some questions on that.
And
but
he did get some questions on it, but nobody's talking about that today.
Yeah.
I think
he's a genius.
I think it could be tactical here from Mike Gundy.
I think he's smarter than we think.
You have to be a pretty smart football coach to keep a job. I think he's at over 20 years now
He's
at Oklahoma State.
been there forever. Yeah.
He's been there for forever. So let's not maybe just say, oh, Mike Gundy's an idiot. What's he doing? I think he might be smarter than you think. I think he might be more planned than we think in what he said at Media Days yesterday. That's my take on it. We'll wrap up hour 1 of Hail Varsity Radio after the break.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time here in hour 1 of a Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. It's Elijah Herbel and Will Wilson. He's in for Chris Schmidt this week. As Schmidt's got the week off, he'll be back with us. I think Saturday is the date. I still need to lock that in, but I think Saturday is the day that Schmidt's going to be back. We always have our online streaming-only show on Saturday morning, 7:45-ish till 9:15-ish, somewhere in there. No commercial breaks for that show, so we have a little bit more flexibility to do what we want. It's a fun show every single week, and you can catch it live on the Hail Varsity YouTube page. There's your plug for the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We've gotten into plenty this hour. Mike Babcock joined us a little bit earlier this hour. We talked a little bit of Mike Gundy. We also talked about the new opportunity you have through 1890 Nebraska to go buy tickets and see a Husker practice, one of the first practices of fall camp on Saturday, August 3rd. That's a pretty cool opportunity. Do I think much information is going to be gleaned from that practice? From a journalist perspective, no, likely not, but still a pretty cool opportunity to see some things, maybe how the coaches operate on the field and the chance to get some money for some Husker athletes if you are so inclined. Also talked about the top 100 players in college football according to EA Sports. So we have had a lot of ground we've covered here this hour. I do want to quickly go back to yesterday, Will. We got a DM, at least I got a DM on Twitter from Tyler. Tyler is from North Dakota. He says North Dakota is definitely cornhole territory. They don't call it bags up in North Dakota. They call it cornhole.
Okay.
But he said, and I want to get you have a soft spot in your heart for the state of Minnesota. Got a lot of family up there.
I do, yes.
He said on an unrelated note to cornhole, he said everywhere you go, they have the classic children's game Duck, Duck, Goose. He says in Minnesota, his friends from around there call it Duck, Duck, Gray Duck.
I'm trying to think if I've heard that or not. I don't think I have.
So you don't know if you can't confirm or deny?
I can't. No, I can't. I'll ask around, see if I can get an answer on that. I think they also call, there's that game Red Rover. I think they call that a different name as well up there.
What is wrong with Minnesota?
I don't know.
They're wrong. They're wrong for calling it bags.
Yep.
They're wrong for calling it Duck, Duck, Gray Duck. And they have a different name for Red Rover?
Yeah, and they have a different name for casserole. They call it hot dish. And they also have a different name for special, or Scotcheroos. I think Scotcheroos.
Yeah.
They call them special K-bars up there.
Okay, I've heard that before at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're different up there, man.
Should we sell Minnesota to Canada? Should we just get that off the plate? They're clearly un-American.
No, they contribute. They contribute a little bit to us.
Maybe. I mean, the Vikings?
Yeah, well,
is that a contribution to America?
I'm a Vikings fan, so I can say that's okay.
0 Super Bowl wins, and they drafted J.J. McCarthy top 10?
Yes. By the way, we lost yesterday. We played a really good team who's won the league a couple times. In order to beat them, you would have to make every single bag, and we're just not quite that good. But we hung with them,
You gotta get a ringer on your team like Elijah Herbel.
Are you a ringer?
You saw me that one night.
I don't know.
I beat you twice.
I don't think you did.
I did. It was a team game. I had a good partner that night, but I beat you twice. That's all I'll say. Before we get out of here this hour, and we are running up against a break here, quick news and note from Husker Baseball team. We're going to get Evan Bland's take on this here to lead off hour 2. They're going to be playing in the Frisco Classic to kick off their season. The most notable team on that schedule is going to be LSU, so you get a chance at the I guess I was going to say the reigning defending champions, but it's no longer. They won the championship in Omaha 2 years ago. You're also going to get Kansas State and Sam Houston down in that. So we're going to get Evan Bland's take on a difficult start to the season for Husker Baseball with the Frisco Challenge. Some thoughts on Husker football as well. Evan Bland's after the break right here on Hail Varsity Radio.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Rolling into hour 2 here, a Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Elijah Herbel joined here in studio by Will Wilson, filling in for Schmidt, who has got the week off today. You can find us both on Twitter at Herbal Essences for me, Elijah Herbel, at Willie on the radio for the man here next to me, Will Wilson. And also, while you're at it, follow the show on Twitter at HVarsity Radio, is where you can get the show lineup every single day. You can get a live stream of the show, and you can also get some of the best clips from every single show on the Twitter page as well. So we encourage you to check out that. Give us a follow. And without further ado, let's welcome the Omaha World-Herald's Evan Bland to the show. Evan, it's good to chat with you. It feels like it's been a little bit here as we've been off last week for the 4th of July. I guess that's where we'll lead it off. How was your 4th of July? Sorry, Evan, it's to get you live on the air. Did you hear that?
I did not, but how's it going?
Good. I was just asking how your 4th of July was.
You know, I tend to try to take time away during that time after the College World Series. So it was, I can confirm that in Wyoming, where we went for a few days, they still blow up fireworks out there. So it was great. It was a good time to get away and check out some fireworks.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Our friend, the late great Mike Leach, grew up in Cody, Wyoming, and talked about once with us, and this was on one of our Best of shows last week, his ability to find cherry bombs and bottle rockets in the state of Wyoming, and hilarity ensued there. So it was good to remember Mike Leach on the 4th of July. But Evan, where I want to lead this off, a lighter conversation, as I'm sure you know Will from the morning hookup here. He was snacking on some munchies during the break. And I don't want to give free shout-outs here to the company of Munchies, but it leads up an interesting question. He's got the Cheese Fix brand in front of us. That includes pretzels, Sun Chips, Doritos, and Cheetos. And if you had your pick of the four, you open up a bag of Munchies, which one are you going for first?
I mean, if I'm in that situation at work around a computer, I'm going to go pretzels because it's the cleanest, I think. Doritos around a laptop is trouble. I think you gotta either commit to being away from technology to snack on those things, or not. So yeah, if I'm trying to mix and match with work, I'd go pretzels just for the cleanliness of it.
Do you like Munchies, or do you prefer having the different chips individually?
I'd probably take the individual items on their own if I could, but every now and again you get a wild hair and you want to reach in and you're not knowing what you're grabbing, and sometimes those combination of flavors work out too. But I think most of the time, give me the one item and we'll go all in on that.
Well, do you want to stand up on a soapbox here for why you prefer the Munchies side of things?
I don't know. I went to the gas station the other day and I wanted the variety, and cheese kind of sounded good. So I went with that. Yeah. I don't know. I go with pistachios, but I was feeling cheesy.
That's cool. You do you, man. That's, you put yourself out there. That's good.
Thanks, Evan.
It's Evan Blaine with us here from the Omaha World-Herald. I promise we'll get to sports here momentarily. Actually, where we're going to go now is, Evan, you tweeted this out, the Huskers, the baseball team, I should say, with the news release today. The Frisco Classic is going to be the tournament they play in to kick off their season next year. I think with the schedule, the way it is in the Big Ten, not the top teams in college baseball, you saw how that affected Husker baseball through the postseason this year, despite the fact that, at least according to what we saw in the Big Ten tournament, you're the best team in the Big Ten. Didn't quite seem to matter once you ran into some heavy hitters such as Oklahoma State and Florida in the regional. Do you think a tournament such as this, where you do get a real heavy hitter in LSU, can help them? Or do you think when it's that early in the season, it's really just a wild card with what you're going to get in a tournament that runs late February into early March?
Well, I think the big key about that tournament is it's a chance to boost your RPI and your strength of schedule. And, typically or oftentimes Nebraska's played these right away, like they did this past season against Baylor and Oklahoma and teams like that. So this time they actually are going to get a couple weekends to kind of get their sea legs and get to the tournament. But, I mean, I think what separates this weekend from some other big weekends Nebraska had in the non-con is the depth of the tournament. So, like, LSU is going to get the headlines, and they should, as the 2023 national champs and just their brand. But Sam Houston hasn't had a losing season in, 10 years, and the state just came off Super Regional appearance. So, you're going to have three opportunities to boost that the schedule. And as we know, you got to make hay in February and March, because the 10th schedule being what it is, there's going to be some atrophy there, and so you got to have those quality wins locked up earlier in the season if you can. And interesting about the Frisco Classic specifically, that Nebraska went in 2017, they beat a ranked Arizona team, and when they went in 2019, they beat a ranked Tech team, top 5 team. In cases, those were really instrumental victories that got them into the postseason. So they're going to have that chance against LSU. They've played them once ever. Their history is 15, and pull their chances against two other clubs that can boost your RPI. So I think it's a positive development for Nebraska to get in that thing, and maybe the wild card for fans, I can see that the ballpark down there does have a Liberty River in right field. So if you're a fan down there and it's warm enough in North Texas, first week in March, maybe you can hop in or two and watch them do. So all kinds of opportunity for everybody.
We're We're talking to Evan Bland. Evan, we're getting some phone breakup. We're going to try and work through it. They've been to Frisco before. Did you travel down for the last time they were down there?
I was not there in 2018. They played, that was beat Tech, and they lost shootout to Houston State. And then I think weather worked out the Mississippi State game that they were playing. I did go in 2017, and it's gorgeous. It's a really good park, the AA affiliate of the Rangers, Frisco Rough Riders, and so you got mascot is essentially Teddy Roosevelt for people who've seen it. So it's a really cool venue. Obviously it's a good recruiting area, a good chance to for fans in that part of the country to see you play, and it's an all weekend. So you have 3 games against 3 opponents. So I mean, I enjoyed going in 2017. Hopefully I can get down next year, and I think it's definitely a worthwhile trip for fans to take if they're interested.
In terms of RPI, Evan, here, the last question on Husker Baseball before we switch gears, talk football, Evan Cooper, John Butler as well. What type of teams do you think Nebraska is going to be scheduling for their weekend series through the non-conference just to try and boost that RPI? Do you think they try going down south a little bit more? Last year you had Grand Canyon and the College of Charleston being some RPI boosters. Do you think you go for more Power 5 type opponents next year if you can schedule them? Or what type of scheduling do you think Will Bolt will have for this team, given that you'll have a pretty good idea of what this roster is by the time fall rolls around?
I think you do exactly what you just did here. I think you have your one non-con weekend that we just described, and then I think you find those mid-major teams that are traditionally successful in their conferences, and you play on their field, whether that's earlier in February or maybe mid-March. And the other thing to remember is, the Big Ten is going to be a bigger baseball conference next year. So you're in additional conference games, which are going to cut into your non-conference schedule. So you might have 3 weekends, maybe 4, that you'll have to worry about scheduling. And then it comes down to your midweek. And I think Nebraska nailed that too, where you traded out some Summit League games in favor of your extra games at Kansas State, Wichita State, Creighton, and it's just Nebraska wanted to win more of those games. The strategy has been really sound, in that you win those games, it boosts your resume. You lose them, it doesn't really hurt you that much. So I would do what they did. Again, you're going to have fewer opportunities because of your expanded schedule. I think they found their sweet spot, and again, it comes down to, fair or otherwise, how much you win in that first month of the season goes a long way in determining your at-large chances.
Evan Bland with us here. And Evan, give us a second. We're going to get you redialed on our second phone line. It's gotten better, but it's still not perfect. I think we get slightly better audio quality. So hang with us. I'm going to get you redialed here. We'll get you back on in 2 seconds, okay?
Sure.
It's always good talking to Evan. Frisco, anybody in the chat ever been to Frisco? I've always wondered, because I know we've been there before. I don't know. I think maybe once. I don't know if we've been there multiple times, but let me know if you've been to Frisco. Curious. Maybe I should go. Let me know if any of you are planning on going down to Frisco. Some decent teams in there. Sam Houston. Didn't we play them this year? Maybe not.
They have former Husker coach, or I guess athlete, Sirianni.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Playing for them, or I should say coaching for them.
Gotcha.
Mike Sirianni, I believe?
Yeah, that's it.
I believe we have Evan Bland back here on the show. Evan, you got us?
Yeah, I can hear you. You got me?
Loud and clear, loud and clear. So, Evan, let's switch gears here, talk some football, and talk Evan Cooper, his surprise resignation last Friday night. John Butler appears to be the guy, not officially announced, but it does sound like he is at least in Lincoln and about to put that pen to paper. Should be officially announced here shortly based on what I'm hearing. I just want to get your reaction to that 1-2 punch of Nebraska losing Evan Cooper and quickly jumping to John Butler as being the next guy. I don't want to necessarily call it an upgrade, but you found a guy resume-wise that does impress to come step in and fill the shoes of Evan Cooper. Yeah,
no doubt. I mean, the pivot is impressive from the news of Cooper's resignation to the hire, and it's not like maybe Nebraska didn't know or have a little bit of heads up on what was going on, but certainly if you can make a hire in June, 2 months before the season, and it can be a guy who's been a Big Ten defensive coordinator, a guy who's been in the NFL, who receives glowing praise from his NFL secondary, like that's a positive reflection on Nebraska, on Matt Rule, on their preparedness to that situation, and you read in a little bit into his situation at Buffalo, where he left with a year left on his contract, essentially betting on himself to say, hey, I want to run my own defense at the college or the pro level. You can definitely see a situation where he could be sort of a strong candidate to take over as defensive coordinator whenever Tony White moves on to his own program down the road. So that part's all really positive. Cooper, you're going to lose some things with his departure. There's no doubt, just because, he was Matt Rule's right-hand man for the entirety of his head coaching career at 3 different stops. He knew the measurables. He knew the qualities that Matt Rule was looking for in recruits. He was the guy that he would turn to, that Rule would turn to, to check out a player's huddle tape or to evaluate things. And I'll be curious to see how much that affects Nebraska's presence in Miami. 6 months ago, they had an analyst in Philip Simpson and Cooper, who both were strong presences in that city in Florida, and now both are gone. And so what does that look like for Nebraska? Recruiting that particular city, I think, remains to be seen. But again, if you can be at this point in the season, you don't want to be making these kind of moves in July. But if you have to be, Nebraska clearly made the most of the situation. And I think in the long term, it could absolutely be an upside hire for Nebraska.
We're talking to Evan Bland. Evan, staying out of football, a big announcement today. They're going to be holding an open practice, but $25 a ticket. We know that much. Thoughts on this? It's going to be helping NIL, and you think they're going to continue to do this?
Yeah, it's a creative move. I think maybe a few teams around the country are doing it, but it's a reminder that anytime you can, as a college athletic department, open up a new revenue stream, you got to do it. And so Nebraska's doing it. I thought it was interesting. This isn't just a football move, even though it's a football practice. They say that these funds will be distributed to all the sports in the athletic department. So to me, I'm just kind of curious, like, what kind of turnout are you going to get? $25 a pop. Do you get 10,000 on a Saturday night under the lights at 6:30? Is it closer to what you would get for a spring game? I don't know. I think it's something new. It's something different. I'm sure Husker Nation will turn out in some amount. That'll be fascinating to see. That'll probably be ahead of what you see around the country in a lot of ways. And they call it what they call it the Big Red Preview, which is kind of interesting too. They'll have just started fall camp a few days earlier, so this is a really early look at what the team could be. So I think, fans can come out. The weather's good. You can watch a little bit of what your football team's going to look like and contribute to the NIL funds across the different sports on campus. It's a win. So we'll see how it turns out. But typically these sort of events, Nebraska pulls them off pretty well, and I think the fan base tends to show up too.
It's Evan Bland with us here from the Omaha World-Herald. And Evan, last stop before we get you out, about 60 seconds. EA Sports College Football released their top 100 players for the upcoming season. Do I think that really matters for Huskers and their success this year? No, I don't. But I do want to ask the question, what players do you think need to perform like top 100 players this year if Nebraska is going to find success in 2024?
Well, you can start with the quarterback and Dylan Raiola, and maybe that's not fair, but just given the upgrade that position is going to have, if he did perform at that level, that's going to be the impetus to this turnaround that a lot of national media folks are predicting. So I think he'd be one, and then, I'd look at the Lions, which tend to be the strength of this team, I think, this year. Whether that's Ty Robinson or Nash Hutmaker, Ben Scott maybe at center. Like, if your dudes in the trenches are dudes, that's a heck of a start to winning some games and to hanging tough in the Big Ten. So I'm going to go quarterback, and I'm going to go both lines. And, if some of the other skill position spots or the secondary players spike as they could, all the better. But if you can get quarterback and line play right, you're off to a great start. I think Nebraska has some guys that you could make a case can be those guys.
We'll get some thoughts on the offensive line here after the break. It's Evan Bland with us here from the Omaha World-Herald. Find him on Twitter at Evan Bland, OWH, and check out his work with the World-Herald. Evan, appreciate you taking some time out of your Wednesday, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk with you next week, all right?
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. See ya.
There is Evan Bland. We'll get some thoughts from Donovan Raiola after this.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Continuing on here on a Wednesday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, we're powered by Cornhead Lager, Elijah Herbel and Will Wilson with you today, and we've hit really the full range of topics for you on a Wednesday. Been jumping around just a little bit. We've talked EA Sports, college football, their top 100 list of players, not including any Huskers. Does it matter? No, but could it matter? Maybe a little bit in a football sense by the end of the year. Maybe. I tried to make the argument. It hasn't gone over great for me, but I've tried to make the argument here today. We also hit a little bit of this new Husker event down at Memorial Stadium where they're going to have tickets available to go watch a practice. We've hit Mike Gundy. We've hit Husker baseball schedule. We've also hit the ideal flavor of chip within a bag of munchies, thanks to our friend here, Will Wilson, as Eric chimes in here on the stream and says, it's the dog days of summer whenever we're ranking munchies. Not necessarily wrong. Oh, how could I forget? We also talked about Minnesota calling duck, duck, goose, duck, duck, gray, duck. Yeah. Brennan chimes in. His wife is a Minnesota native, and she confirms that duck, duck, gray, duck is the correct terminology in Minnesota.
Okay.
So that seems a little bit wrong. He also says she owns Hawkeye gear, so her credibility could be low.
Yeah, that's true. Let's believe that.
Larry chimes in and says up in Minnesota, brownies are just called bars.
Okay. All right. That checks out.
For the weirdness of everything.
Yep.
Justin chimes in and says, PJ Fleck will sell Minnesota to Canada for Fleck bucks. Cole's cash has dropped in value ever since Kirk Cousins left.
True. I went up there for Thanksgiving a few years ago, and apparently, this is a popular food. It was this salad, but with peas and, but it was like mayonnaise. It was like mayonnaise with peas and carrots and cheese and olives. It was disgusting.
Yeah, Minnesota to Canada, I think, could be a good deal for the United States.
Let's give Iowa first.
They're kind of it'd be weird to just have one Canadian province in the United States. Minnesota's right there, though.
Yeah,
it would kind of make sense for them to. We'll take British Columbia maybe back in a trade deal.
Okay. Yeah. See how that goes down.
Don't want Saskatchewan, really, personally. I don't know. There's some sort of deal that could be made in there.
Maybe. I'll let you handle that.
Back to football we go here as Coach Donovan Raiola, he was on the network last night, gave some thoughts on the offensive line. The offensive line was one of the spots that Evan laid out along with the defensive line as being a spot where it'd be big for this team to get some guys playing in a top 100 type level in terms of the top 100 players in college football. Back to the list that EA Sports released earlier today. And if you want, do you want to lay out the top 10 players in college football according to EA Sports? We can lay it out. It's, somewhat expected with the top 10 players they have. Number 1, Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. Number 2, Will Campbell, a left tackle from LSU who is actually that good. I think he's going to be a top 5 pick next year in the NFL draft. You have Ollie Gordon II, who we talked about a little on the show, the Oklahoma State running back. You have a defensive end from Tennessee, James Pierce Jr. Then you have the Alabama transfer to Ohio State, Caleb Downs, the safety. Travis Hunter, the Colorado wide receiver, comes in at 6. You have Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia, coming in at 7. Mason Graham, the big-time defensive tackle from Michigan, he's in at 8. Quinshon Judkins, the Ole Miss transfer to Ohio State to be their new running back, he's in at 9. Then you have Tate Rutledge, the right guard from Georgia, coming in at number 10. So those are your top 10 players in college football, according to EA Sports College Football. If Nebraska could get an offensive lineman in there, I think that'd be huge. I'm not sure Nebraska really has candidates to be that kind of guy. Mizuka, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Ben Hart made a jump last year. I'm still not sure he's a top 10 player in college football, even a top 10 right tackle in all of college football would be tough. I do look at Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher as being two guys that on the interior part of your defensive line will be really hard to block in tandem, meaning they could kind of elevate the level of each other a little bit. We discussed a couple weeks ago on this show when we were up at the College World Series, could Nebraska have a double-digit sack guy or two on this team this year? And I think if you can get one of those double-digit sack guys, Ty Robinson's the first name that comes to mind, but you also maybe look at James Williams. A double-digit sack guy could get you up in the conversation of being a top 100 player in college football,
yeah, and
in my opinion.
Even maybe a top 10 defense is maybe a stretch, but top 25, I definitely think that's possible too.
And yeah, there's got to be pieces along that defense that if you get nationally noticed, such as that being a unit, a defensive unit that can be a top 15, top 20 defense in college football, guys are going to get noticed. And that's what I think the more important part of this conversation is like, if you're playing well enough to have guys that are in a top 100 conversation in terms of the top 100 players in college football, it means you as a team are doing good things. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg type discussion of Nebraska needs top 100 type caliber guys to be in the national conversation, but also being in the national conversation will put guys into that top 100 conversation in all of college football. Does it really matter? No, but I think it is a good gauge in terms of the national perception of what Nebraska football is doing. Back to business, though. Donovan Raiola, he was on the network last night and talked a little bit about the offensive line. First cut here is on the importance of the returning experience Nebraska had on the offensive line last year and the returning experience they have this year, what he thinks it means for what this offensive line can be in 2024.
That's kind of how you like the offensive line room to be built up, right, with a bunch of veteran guys that have been through a lot of things and have a lot of experience. And then, you have the younger group coming up. So those older guys can set the standards, set the example for those young guys, and then also bring them along and coach them up and just kind of get them ready for when it's their turn. So that's exciting.
And in terms of returning experience, you have a ton on this offensive line, ton of returning starts. Bryce Benhart being the leader in that category. You also have Turner Corcoran, should he end up being the starter. I know that right guard spot a little bit up in the air in terms of who is going to be your starter. Corcoran and Lutovsky have both played a ton of football, though, and you see who comes out of that conversation. Ben Scott played a ton of football at Arizona State, played really, really well for Nebraska last season. On the left guard spot, Mazuka is, I think, the guy you're putting in there in Pencil, the transfer from Florida. He's also played a ton of college football. And then Teddy Prohaska being the guy on that offensive line that maybe has the least amount of experience, mostly because of injuries, is a good thing for your offensive line, I think, as a whole, considering we see the upside with Teddy Prohaska. We've seen him flash in moments. I don't think he's put it all together just yet, but a full offseason where you're healthy and you get to work on your game as opposed to working on rehabbing could be big for a guy in Teddy Prohaska. Donovan Raiola spent a little bit of time on Teddy Prohaska and why he thinks he could be able to take a jump this upcoming football season.
Teddy's working really hard, in the weight room, first of all, to improve his strength, improve his body, to be able to handle the chaos of game day, right, in a non-controlled environment, which, a lot of times when you're working out and doing drills or practicing, it's kind of controlled, right? So, but his body's, you can see his body changing, gaining more lean muscle mass thanks to Miss Kristen and Coach Campbell in the weight room. He's doing a great job working really hard at. And then football-wise, he's working, at improving his skills as well, which helps when he gets stronger. It helps him, allows him to improve faster.
And I think one of the reasons why you could see a guy in Teddy Prohaska make a jump this upcoming football season is because of what you saw from Bryce Benhart in terms of the jump he made last season. Like, Teddy Prohaska looked like Bryce Benhart looked like a different football player in terms of really confidence last year. He looked like a guy that was confident in himself, looked like a guy that no matter who is lined up against him, you liked his chances against them. And the Michigan game might be the one exception to that, but Michigan made a lot of people look like that last season. But you saw a guy that was confident in himself and looked much improved in his abilities. And I think you look at that jump, and that's why you kind of think maybe Teddy Prohaska with a full offseason under his belt to get better and focus on his craft could be able to make that kind of jump this upcoming season. But Coach Raiola spent a little bit of time on Bryce Benhart, the jump he made in 2023, and why he thinks Benhart could make another jump in 2024.
Just the experience, you can see it. He was just such a different person on game day and from day to day. I mean, just I think the process and the standards that Coach Rule brought in and what's expected of him and just him focusing on really being one better each day, and not getting too far ahead of himself. And then, just being, the experience allows him to relax, and understand, like, there's little details that just got to get cleaned up. It's not a whole, change in his game. So, and he works hard at it. He works hard at what he needs to improve on, his weaknesses, and then, he'll be a lot better as well this year.
And, well, one of the reasons why I think you could see this offensive line make a jump next season is there's always going to be a lot on the plate of the offensive line. I think the success of your offense is always dependent on how good is your offensive line. Like, what you want to do, it all starts. If you want to pass a lot, you need an offensive line that can protect the quarterback. If you want to run the football a lot, you need an offensive line that can open up holes and give your running backs room to do what they do best. It all starts up front, and I think a lot of football teams offensively can be defined by how good is your offensive line. It's kind of the floor setter for how good your offense can be. I think the skill position guys determine the ceiling. The offensive line determines the floor, and Nebraska's offense hasn't been great. It's been passable in like the late Frost years into that Mickey Joseph season. It was passable as an offensive line. You look at last season, and I think there was a lot that was put on the offensive line's plate because of what you had skill position-wise, that this offensive line had to be the guys that led the charge forward. But I don't think that's going to be the task this season. That's why I think there is potential for this offensive line to look better, is because defenses aren't going to be able to put 8 guys in the box and say, hey, we're just going to have a numbers advantage in the box, and your offensive line has to be good enough to go beat that if you want to run the football. On the flip side of things, I think offenses are going to feel a little less comfortable whenever you are in 3rd and long to be able to get after the quarterback and blitz and bring some rare things, because you have a quarterback that can make you pay if you leave your back end exposed. It's not going to be a guy that's trying to hold on to the ball for 5-6 seconds in the pocket just waiting for a guy to run wide open. You have a quarterback that can make the back end of your defense pay should you have that 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 blitz coming. He can read that pre-snap. The goal would be with a guy like Raiola, read that pre-snap, get the ball out quick, and try to make a defense pay for that.
Yeah, I like the comment we got from Fongway. Convinced me that lots of returning starters from a 5-7 team is a good thing. You know, I guess that's fair. Personally, I love experience on the O-line. I think that means a lot compared to any other position. And, you know, we brought some new blood in, right? We've got some transfers. And then I love Moonbot's reply, and he says they need to convince us. I think a lot of people are still there. It's been a while. How long has it been since we've had a decent O-line?
Since he had a decent O-line?
Decent.
The season you go back to would be the Divine Ozigbo 2018 season, where I think that was an offensive line that was at least middle of the road, top half of the Big Ten.
Right.
That's the season I go back to, which that's what I'd say is a decent offensive line, is being top half of the Big Ten, or at least middle of the pack, but airing towards that top half of the Big Ten side as opposed to the bottom half. That's the kind of standard I give for it, and that's probably how far back you have to go. But I don't think it's ever a bad thing to have experience along your offensive line, even from a 5-7 football team, because you have a staff in place that emphasizes development. The best way to develop is on the field on Saturdays. Yeah, you can develop and practice on Monday through Friday, but you develop by getting those in-game reps. And I think by being able to look back at last season and say, we're a 5-7 football team, what do we need to do this offseason to get better? You have a staff that emphasizes development, learning from the mistakes, and learning from what you were last season in order to be a better version of yourself the upcoming season. That's why I think returning production is always a good thing. We'll get a Jock Doc after this. Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic, joins the show.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wednesday rolls forward. It's Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Elijah Herbel and Will Wilson with you here today, taking you through the show. We'll be with you all week long before Schmitty makes it back from his golfing trip. Excited to welcome Dr. Brandon Seifert, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, to the show for another Jock Doc Wednesday. And Dr. Brandon, it's good to chat with you. Still all 10 fingers, all 10 toes from your 4th of July, correct?
Hey, we're pretty good. We've had to put a few back together, but I'm pretty good.
Wait, actually?
Oh, my God.
So, yep. But not to get into the woods with that. Let's roll with Schmitty. How's Schmitty doing?
Yes, I didn't want to ask you to get too deep into the woods with that. I just didn't know how big an issue that was around here. I'm sorry to hear that for any folks who were dealing with you with that one.
Yeah.
Schmitty's doing all right from what I've been told. I'm not sure if you've caught any shows this week, Dr. Brandon, but he got his foot caught in between a golf cart and a retaining wall while he was hitting the course last Friday and got a small fracture on the outside of his ankle. Just, you know, he's weight-bearing, he's in a boot, and they say they're getting him back in for x-rays in a couple of weeks.
Poor buddy. Man, it's easy to get there, darn it. I'm glad to hear he's recovering.
From a performance point of view, do you think it affects his radio game moving forward? What's this recovery process look like?
Yeah, it could be tough. You guys might have to get him a special chair for the studio.
Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday. No, Chris Schmidt, not our topic for today. Our topic for the day is Kawhi Leonard, as he had to withdraw from the U.S. men's national team. They're heading over to Paris to play in the Olympics, and he's a late withdrawal after a week of practice, going to be replaced by Derek White. And Dr. Brandon, it's due to knee inflammation and knee swelling. Apparently this is a chronic issue he's been dealing with over the past couple of seasons. Missed some games the end of last season, and he's going to be a no-go for the 2024 Olympics. Your thoughts on the knee injury that Kawhi Leonard's dealing with, apparently a long-term issue?
Yeah, absolutely, Elijah. When you think about him, it's important to kind of go back and rewind to his injury history. And so with this knee, he's got a history of, recent meniscus tear. There's also kind of a history here of a partial ACL tear they've been nursing along. And so definitely some wear and tear from that perspective. So you kind of have the scenario set up where he has an acute on kind of chronic pathology, but the more acute stuff being kind of this season, the partial ACL, the meniscal pathology. But if you think about a number of years in the league, some of the tweaks and things he's had along the way, probably his biggest issue at this point is dealing with some cartilage pathology. And so if we talk about kind of knee anatomy, cartilage is that smooth surface basically on the end of the bone, just kind of your gliding surface. And so what can happen in that scenario with trauma, repetitive play, you can have the issues where you kind of damage the cartilage, it starts to fray, it starts to break down. And then that's kind of a whole different kind of pathology and pain perspective and ability to play compared to other stuff like meniscus tears, ACL injury. It tends to become more kind of the chronic kind of nagging issue. And then it becomes more of an issue of how do you manage that in the off-season in terms of maintaining appropriate rest versus being able to handle the amount of workouts you have to do to stay appropriate fitness for the season.
Dr. Brady, even for this interview, you're going to be driving through a thunderstorm. That is significant sounding in the background. We can still hear you loud and clear, but are you safe to be talking with us right now?
Yeah, no, hey, we're all good. Yep, I'm sorry about the rainstorm here, darn it.
No, it's okay. It's just I'm making sure you're safe.
Timing.
I'm just making sure you're safe here to be doing a radio interview. That just sounds significant. Are you white knuckle driving right now?
No, we're all good. Actually, it's not bad. It's just unfortunately a little bit of speed will have the rain a little hard on the windshield. So sorry about that. I'll try to up the volume here and see if maybe that helps.
Oh, it's all good. We appreciate you being with us here, Dr. Brandon. It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here, a Jock Doc Wednesday on Hail Varsity Radio. As we're talking Kawhi Leonard, he withdraws from the Olympics due to some chronic knee issues. And Dr. Brandon, I want to get your thoughts in terms of the future for Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, he's going to take the next couple of months off trying to rehab this knee. How do you think that the couple months can help him as he gears up for the 2024-2025 NBA season? And is this something that he's just going to have to manage for the rest of his career, or can a couple months of rest here maybe get him right moving forward?
Yeah, I think he starts to really respond well. I think that cartilage calms down a little bit. As he rests, you also wonder about is there something they can do from kind of like a structural cleanup perspective. If he does have some pathology with that meniscus, going in and doing a cleanup with that could be potentially beneficial for him. And so that'd be an option for him, too, in terms of arthroscopy. So that's probably on the books that they're thinking about. And then, again, the big thing is kind of the rest piece of it. And then I do think he still has pretty good prospects for next year. I mean, the biggest thing is they haven't really talked about what kind of cartilage injury does he have, what kind of basically arthritis does he have. If it's more kind of mild, a little bit of fraying, then he probably has a pretty good outlook. And obviously if he's got some areas where there's maybe only 50% or less of that cartilage, then that's going to be a big issue where he struggles.
Dr. Brandon, everything that you just talked about, the knee, the damage, I want you to picture a perfectly healthy knee, or a knee before any injury happens to it. So could Kawhi's knee ever get back to what a perfectly healthy knee looks like?
Yeah, in this scenario, no, especially with all the wear and tear that's there. And, when you start talking about having meniscus pathology and even potentially a partial ACL, that's some pretty significant structural issue that's there. And you start to basically compound that with likely some chondral or cartilage wear. Obviously he's never going to get quite back to that same level. But again, still the question becomes, can he still give you quality minutes? Can he still be obviously explosive enough? And I still think that potential is there. But I do think, in terms of volume and minutes, that's probably going to go down for him.
Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday, talking Kawhi Leonard, his right knee inflammation and pain he's been dealing with. It's forcing him to withdraw from the 2024 Olympics. He's going to be a part of the U.S. men's national team basketball squad. And Dr. Brandon, as we look ahead, long-term prospects here, there's some guys Kawhi's age. He's 33 years old right now. You got Paul George at 34. You have James Harden at 33. You got Kyrie Irving, I think, at 32 now. A lot of guys playing some high-level basketball at his age, and I want to get your thoughts. Do you think that these knee issues are going to shorten his career in any way, shape, or form? Or if it's managed correctly, do you think you can still get your best basketball out of Kawhi when you really need it?
Yeah, I think there's probably a shortening effect here. the fortunate athletes that are out there can kind of avoid some of those big things, meniscus tearing, ACL, even partial injuries. Their career tends to obviously be longer. So he probably got a little bit of shortening just based on that. But really, in the end, if you could say, Doc, what's going to be the thing that either A, gets 10 more years or kind of shortens up that career, it really does boil down to just basically how that cartilage looks. That's the thing that just gives him this chronic nagging pain. It's hard to kind of compete at that high level for sustained periods of time. Once you reach that point, that cartilage starts to break down. And that'd be kind of the big question mark for him. Unfortunately, we don't really have a lot of details as to what that looks like. But no doubt, with his history, time in the league, there's probably some significant chondral wear, would be my guess.
Last thought here, Dr. Brandon, about 30 seconds. Do you think post-basketball, when it's all over for Kawhi, he's due for a knee replacement? How do you think they manage this after the basketball career?
Yeah, honestly, it depends really how significant the chondral injuries are. For him, he's still, obviously, when we look at him from a professional athlete, he's kind of older in the professional athlete perspective. But from our perspective, orthopedically, he's really kind of on the young spectrum. And so he'd be a guy, if you maybe have one or two kind of isolated areas of some cartilage wear, you could even think about maybe some cartilage transplant type procedures. Cartilage restoration is kind of the term we use for it, where you can transfer in some cartilage to that area that would give him a smooth surface. That would be kind of the ideal thing for him, because he really is he's very young, kind of in the orthopedic world and the arthritis world. If you ask about, replacement-wise, that would be something that I'm trying to push way out, kind of get into the late 50s, 60s if we can. Is that a possibility for him down the road? There's a potential for it, especially anytime you have meniscus and ACL pathology.
Dr. Brandon Seifert with us at Jock Doc Wednesday. Dr. Brandon, appreciate it. We'll get caught up with you next week.
Hey, you fellas, take care. Sorry about the rain noise there. You guys take care.
Oh, you're all good, Dr. Brandon.
All right. Bye now.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time here on a Friday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Logger, Elijah Herbel and Will Wilson. As we've covered plenty of ground today, we just heard from Dr. Brandon Seifert, a Jock Doc Wednesday. As we talked Kawhi Leonard withdrawing from the Olympics. He's going to be spending some time doing a little bit of rehab, some rest and relaxation as he gets himself geared up for the 2024-2025 NBA season. Derek White going to be filling in for Kawhi Leonard on this squad this season. We also heard from Evan Bland leading off hour 2. We talked a little Husker baseball, talked a little Husker football, talked some munchies. So we hit the whole gamut with Evan Bland. Back in hour 1, we heard from Mike Babcock, got Mike's take on this practice that Nebraska is going to be hosting here to open up fall camp. It's going to be that first Saturday as they're going to open it up. $25 gets you a chance to, I shouldn't get a chance. It gets you in for a Husker practice in Memorial Stadium on Saturday, August 3rd for the general admission. I'm not quite sure how much you'll get to see, but it's a cool opportunity nonetheless, with all the proceeds going directly to student athletes through 1890 Nebraska. From a journalist point of view, I laid it out. And from an opposition scouting standpoint, I'm not sure how much you're going to get to learn from that practice, but it's a cool opportunity nonetheless to see the players and the coaches up close. And where I want to close this show here, Team USA in basketball. We just talked about Kawhi Leonard. Are they just washed? As you see him in the international scene, it's not what it used to be. It's not Michael Jordan's dream team. It's not that 2008 team with Melo and Kobe and KD and the who's who of basketball at the time that really just dominated the Olympics out in Beijing. And that was a big one, too, because Kobe was at the height of his stardom, especially overseas. You had Yao Ming playing for China, and China was really, really good as well, so there's a lot of interest. It's not what it was back then, and the international world is seemingly caught up with the United States in basketball. You look at that French team with Wembanyama and all the young talent they're sending over right now. I mean, even that Japanese team with Keisei Tominaga, I don't think they're going to go win the Olympics, but they're on the upward trajectory.
Spain's
always pretty good. And Argentina, I think Luis Scola is still playing for that Argentinian team.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And then, in the Balkan countries, you have Luka and Jokic that are carrying their teams forward. Basketball is really taken off over in those Balkan, former Eastern Bloc countries.
Greece.
The world is caught up with the United States in basketball.
Yeah.
And my question is, can you just have a collection of great talent anymore and expect to go out there and beat the world? Because I have concerns about that U.S. team going out there in the Olympics and losing.
I like this U.S. team just because it's like the joke was they assembled the Avengers, right? And they have. Like, they pretty much went out and got the NBA All-Star team. Not that they haven't before, but you have some guys that have at least played in the Olympics. You know how it feels, how it is. I don't really worry about this team that much.
My thing is, and what concerns me, is this team's not going to have a lot of time to gel.
Okay.
Going to the Olympics. They have to play as a team. And what the NBA has devolved into in recent years, and especially what the U.S. team has devolved into, has been hero ball. A lot of guys going out there, not many ball reversals. You get one pick and roll on one side, and then it's that ball handler's job to either find an open shooter, find a lane, or hit the roller for an easy two. That's pretty much what the U.S.'s game plan is. And other teams around the world play so much better team basketball. You hear about the fundamentals of Europe, and even the fundamentals of Asia, the fundamentals of South America. I get concerned that those teams, they might not have the talent, but they play so much better of a team brand of basketball. Like, you go play pickup at the YMCA, or you go play rec league basketball, those teams that are playing as a team, they play really, really well. That's my concern with this team moving forward. We'll see. We'll see what the impact of Kawhi Leonard not being on the team is, but I do have concerns. That'll do it for us here on a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Back with you tomorrow from 4 to 6 right here on Hail Varsity.